It's really important right now, especially, to remember that a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So if a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking, then believe something that you want. Believe that you can start here and now and put the attention on moving forward, because if you keep the attention back, and there's so much self-care work talking about healing and talking about moving, like looking back and clearing up the past. Yeah, do it when you need to. If you're trying to create the feeling that you want inside of you and you keep feeling trauma coming up, go back, clear it up quick, and then keep moving forward on the future, because you don't have energy to spare to keep trying to clear out the past. There's not enough energy in the universe to constantly be focused back. You've got to move forward. You've got to be focusing on who you want to be and practicing that feeling of who you are.
This, everybody, is the lovely Christina Fletcher. And Chris is a spiritual aware parenting coach and energy healer who has homeschooled her children for the past 13 years. Her passion is to help parents find balance and authentic connection within their homes using practical spiritual tools, mindfulness, mindset, and inner work. Through this global situation, Christina is dedicated to helping mothers and fathers create a home space that's filled with laughter, light, and connection throughout the stress, so that children can remain emotionally stable and family relationships can thrive. Chris, we're very excited to dive deep into
I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very excited. And I totally forgot what I wrote in my little bio, so I sent it. It's like, oh yeah.
Doesn't that just sound like an awesome person? So let's talk a little bit about why self-care is so challenging to begin with.
Self-care. Well, actually, I would say that the number one thing to remember about self-care is become this wide term that lots of people have different meanings for. So for me, self-care is really care for yourself. And what that means is knowing yourself and being true to yourself and letting the shoulds and have-tos and the roles of being a parent fall away and being yourself. So caring for yourself. Now, self-care for a lot of people can come through exercise and through your diet, and you don't feel yourself so much if you're on a sugar rush, and I've had way too much Easter chocolate today. You don't maybe feel yourself when you're not being using your body a lot, and if you're not doing different things like that. You might not feel yourself as much if you're not making sure that you brush your hair, like we talked about at the beginning. But the truth is that those are all tools to fine-tune into your truest self. So self-care for me is really about diving deep, taking some quiet time, taking some focus time, and doing the things that make you feel more like yourself, so you're being the best version of yourself that you can be for your kids. Why do we push away from that? Because it can be scary. It can be really, really scary to look at ourselves in the mirror sometimes and actually ask ourselves who we are. And that's often because we're really harsh critics about ourselves. We really think that we have this image that we think we need to fulfill and this role that we need to fulfill. And often we look at ourselves and go, I'm not fulfilling that. But that role needs to disintegrate, and we need to actually let go of that and really dive in and be true to ourselves. Now, it's amazing how resistant people are to quiet, and it's amazing how resistant people are to just stopping and being. We're raised to just do all the time. And I'll talk to people. It's like, oh well, who are you? What would you do to somebody else? Like, oh well, I'm a mom, and I am doing this, and I do this for my work, and I love this, and these are my hobbies. And you're like, didn't answer the question. Doesn't answer the question. So that is really why we resist self-care, is because sometimes we just don't want to stop and be. And also there's usually quite a number of layers that tell ourselves why we don't want to be with ourselves. So we can list all the faults, and we can list all the things we don't like about ourselves, and then we convince ourselves that we're not worth having a relationship with. So it really takes Brené Brown, the courage to be vulnerable, and really looking at ourselves and saying, wait, I'm going to get to know myself and actually take care of myself like I would my child, love myself and get to know myself and be true to myself. And within that, working through that, then self-care suddenly becomes a lot easier to handle. Yeah. Say that's the bigger thing. Yeah.
I love that. I think I'll tell you what's come up for me, because, and I've said to quite a few people, I feel like this pandemic is equal to a forced intervention where everybody is being forced to stop and stay still. And with that means you can't get yourself distracted from everything that's coming up from the surface. And I've had quite a few moms, clients, family members, friends on the phone where at different points over the last 3 or 4 weeks where it's felt like too much because they've lived a life where they've turned away from some of the really big things. They've distracted themselves in every way possible. They've convinced themselves that they've moved on and they're okay. And now it's all coming up to the surface and it's bubbling up and it feels overwhelming because it's not one thing. It's all coming up at the surface, begging for attention at the same time. And I would say even with myself, when I think of my own self-care, hand on heart, I think I probably take care of myself 20% of what I need. Yeah, I spend a lot of time serving. Like I have a community that's based on serving people. I serve in my family. I was raised where my dad is the eldest brother in his family, and my mom was the go-to person. So I just kind of fell into that role where we took care of everybody, right? And so I've lived my life that way. And now I can feel all of the things coming up for me saying, okay, this isn't about time. This was not because you were busy running around serving everybody. You have 24 hours and you get to design what you do with it. And still my self-care, I'll admit it's probably gone up by 10%. But not a whole lot, right? And so it's forcing me to look within and say, what was I not willing to look at?
That's a good question.
Get comfortable with. Do you have like a process of helping us look within to find that space that we were probably hiding from to begin with?
I think especially in an intense time like a pandemic, and right now what I'm finding is that what you put your attention on is really growing right now. More than ever before, what you put your attention on is growing. Like this is my energy healer worker part side, that is like in overdrive, where literally it's like energy is like powerful. So rather than, I'm actually like, let's just take a leap forward. Instead of looking at the parts of you that are hiding, let's just release it all right now. So it's rather than putting attention on the parts that you might be hiding, which then is going to send more energy to the parts that are hiding, let's just instead accept yourself right here and now. And honestly, like my very, very favorite act of self-care is the simple step of focusing on your feet. If you focus on your feet, where attention goes, energy flows. And if you focus on your feet, you are allowing energy to flow all the way down into the ground and rooting yourself here in the present moment. It's just as simple as that. It's understanding that your energy, your life, you're alive. Energy is flowing to you always. The universe is surrounding you always, and energy is flowing to you always. So it's a question of saying, I am love. I am made of love. I am loved. I let that in, flowing down to my feet, grounded to the ground. Here I am.
I love that.
That's it. What? You don't have to look back. Just be here and now.
I'll tell you something, and this might sound very funny. Last night, I was doing movie night with my boys, and we watched Doctor Strange. And there was a line in the movie that kind of hit me, where the Enlightened One or the Master One, I can't remember what she was called now, she said a line where she said, you never get rid of your demons. You just learn to live at an elevated level. And that's what you said, that resonated with me in that way. Rather than try to focus on what do I need to clean up my old beliefs, my limited beliefs, get rid of all of the emotional pain and focus all of my energy on that. Just focus my energy on finding that space of love and connectedness with myself and my higher being and just move into that space.
Yeah. It's really important right now, especially, to remember that a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So if a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking, then believe something that you want. Believe that you can start here or now and put the attention on moving forward, because if you're keeping the attention back, and there's so much self-care work talking about healing and talking about moving, like looking back and clearing up the past. Yeah, do it when you need to. If you're trying to create the feeling that you want inside of you and you keep feeling trauma coming up, go back, clear it up quick, and then keep moving forward on the future, because you don't have energy to spare to keep trying to clear out the past. There's not enough energy in the universe to constantly be focused back. You've got to move forward. You've got to be focusing on who you want to be and practicing that feeling of who you are. I always compare it to, like, you know, like if you look back, it's kind of like a high school reunion. You know, when you go to a high school reunion and you always end up acting like the exact same person that you were in high school? There's no getting away from the past if you're always looking past there. Like, you'll always be back there. Moving forward. So best self-care, like honestly, every single morning for me, my self-care looks like, luckily, thank God right now I have a yard. Before we did not. Now that we're in the UK, I have a yard. So, thank goodness. But, so I'm out in the yard, I have my yoga mat, and it is literally, I repeat to myself, I open to love, I receive with love, I give thanks with love, and I connect with love. Boom. That's it. Then I meditate for a few minutes, and then I'm ready for the day. And if I need centering, it's like focus on my feet as often as possible. People will find me like rubbing my feet. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing, just a little bit of self-care. But you need to do what you need to do, but it doesn't need to take huge amounts of time to feel like yourself. You can literally find, you are you. This is who you are. And when you take a step away from reacting to everything, that's when you're going to start being able to show up as yourself more. Yeah.
I think a lot of us can fall in the trap because we've been, whether it's conditioned or whether it's just become habitual, we've moved so far away from ourselves. Like, I remember there was a point in my life where, and thankfully this is a long time now and I've done some work on it, but I remember a little child coming up to me and asking, what's your favorite color? I was like, like, I literally don't know. And I'm like, how can I not know what my own favorite color is? And that set me, that was in my 20s. So not even when life had battered me around, right? And I thought I had to devote a few years to getting to know myself and figure out what's my favorite color, what's my favorite food, because everything up until that point was what I was told should be my favorite.
There it is.
Yeah?
Yep. There it is. It's amazing the things that are the shoulds. It's amazing what pops up, and you kind of go, why? You know, it's the same like when you're telling your kids no all the time, and they're pushing back all the time, and finally you're like, wait, why am I even asking you to do that? Like, I don't know. And yeah, it's amazing the shoulds that come in. When you're talking about the color, it always reminds me of, remember Runaway Bride, that Julia Roberts movie?
Yes.
And she has to like try every single kind of egg just to figure out what kind of egg she likes, because she always yeah.
That's it.
It's true. And it's important to remember that even those kind of things, like there's a deeper level of you. And often it's just a question of deciding, you know what, I'm just going to be myself. If all of a sudden I feel an urge to speak from my own authentic voice, that's what I'm going to follow. I'm going to listen to myself. I'm not going to, like, and there can be a number of different ways of just figuring those things out. Like even, I was just telling a client of mine earlier that, you know, just morning pages, like from The Artist's Way, which is like just a brain dump of actually just like writing, subconscious writing, just every morning, writing 3 pages of nonsense and getting out. All of a sudden you find that your own voice burbles up and you go, oh, that's really what I think, or that's what I'm inspired to say. Powerful, powerful exercise. Just finding ways, finding your happy. Finding your happy is a really powerful way of finding yourself, because if your happy is different than other people's happy, there's no faking that.
Yeah. And I love the finding your happy, because what it forced myself, my entire family, what it forced us to do was to be able to think about how each of us finds our happy. So I had to say, this is what I need to find my happy. And both of my sons did the same. And then we shared that with each other so that when anyone is out of balance, we help navigate the other one to whatever makes them happy. And so like when I'm off balance now, my son will walk up to me and he goes, Mom, I think you need a hug. Because he knows that helps me. And it's funny because it might be that I'm being irritable with him. And you would think that that would make him go, well, why are you talking to me like that? But instead, he recognizes it now, and he'll come up and he goes, I think you need a hug. And that's my signal that I need to take my time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's amazing. And that's that's such a powerful statement. And that is self-care. You know, sometimes self-care can even just be laying that groundwork. So then you can support each other in that, and you can be present with that, and that you are using that. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. Yeah, that's really, really beautiful.
That's what I'm taking away from this conversation now. So I started off by saying my self-care is about 20%. And as we talk more and more, I think that that's actually not true.
I don't think it is too.
I think what is true is that the expectation I've put upon myself by what other people say should be self-care. So self-care should involve meditate for half an hour, do exercise for an hour, journal, maybe do some priming. And I've got this whole long list of all the things that should be in self-care. And no matter what, I can never get them all done in any given day. And I think I use that as a yardstick to measure my self-care, as opposed to the fact that sometimes I just lean in. Sometimes I say, today I don't feel like doing anything. It's a do nothing day. And for me, that is also self-care.
That's self-care. And you know what? Especially now. It's so funny because there's all these posts coming up of being like, it's time to learn a new language. And you're like, what are you talking about? No, it's not. No, like honestly, tuning in, making sure that you're navigating through, making sure that you are focused on positive aspects of your life. Not, hey, you know what? Not watching the news can be an act of self-care. When you're washing the dishes, if you want to be singing a song, that's self-care. Whatever is going to keep you feeling present and keeping connected to who you are and yourself and keeping your own mind and heart space your own, that's self-care.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm going to have to revise my numbers.
You are definitely going to have to revise those numbers. No, and honestly, I would suggest if anyone has a long list of what self-care means of the shoulds, if they like include things that are shoulds, please just rip it up. It's like, and my very favorite line nowadays is, we're in a pandemic. Please just rip it up. What was true then is not true now. We're in a pandemic. We've never been in this position before. Self-care is about true self-care. Hands on heart, I will be present. I will be fully myself, and I am tuning in. And that's, that's what we all need. That's where we need our energy to go.
I'll tell you where I think I still struggle. And I know it's the same for a lot of moms. And Lenora touched on it earlier on when she was talking about taking time for herself. On a day where I say like yesterday was a do nothing day. I got up and I just felt, you know what, it's been a full on week. And I just need to sit with the kids. Just sit in the same room. I can read something that's light, watch whatever they're watching, and just kind of get into conversation. Then I had this whole bag of guilt. You know how long your to-do list is? Just think of it. You sat here for an hour of work would have gotten you how much done. And it's hard to let go of that because I think there's so much that I want to do in the world. And I always feel like there's this tug of war between serving others and serving myself. And intellectually, I know, fill my cup first, I have more to serve. But in the moment, I still find myself having to fight with the guilt.
Yep. I really think that, and actually, I sat with my own coach and actually broke down a schedule. And it actually made a huge difference because it meant that my work goes this time and it's not allowed outside the time.
Right.
That actually was a self-care practice that we put in place. And she was like, no, we need to actually break this down. And even to the point of going, because I was doing that even within work. It was like, every time I was doing one thing, then I would feel guilty that I was like, wait a second, what about those other people I need to be serving? And so we actually broke it down where it was like, okay, for like from 12 to 1:30, I focus on this element and on this and those restrictions. It's interesting because we all find ourselves, this is actually something that I'm planning on writing a little bit about, because we all find ourselves in really restricted times. We're really restricted. But I always, whenever I think of restrictions, I'm always reminded of my husband took a music course once. And one of the projects that they actually gave him was to write a song with 4 notes. And they said the interesting thing is that when you're restricted to just 4 notes and you have to write a song with 4 notes, your choices all of a sudden become very focused. So I'm kind of now going, you know what a powerful thing that we are actually restricted, because there's power in those restrictions. So if we restrict our time to being like, right, from this time to this time, oh, I'm sorry, guilty mind. I have to actually be focusing on myself right now. This is my steps time. You know, suddenly the guilt is not present. It's like, deal with it. Okay, actually, I can deal with that because I deal with that from this time to this time. I don't even have to think about it. It's over there. There's restrictions. It creates a structure, which I think right now, with all that energy that's flowing, I think we're actually able to then focus, because that's what's happening. The guilt can come from a lack of focus. It can come from feeling so bombarded that you're like, I have so many people to help and so many people to serve. How am I going to help them? And how can I support them and my kids and myself? Little steps, little chunks of time, little step by step, seeing that kind of build, it creates that structure and restricted foundation, you know? And then you're kind of inviting it in as well, of saying, okay, you know what, in this period of time, this is what I fully focus on. And then you're creating that focus. It's really powerful. It was a really powerful shift, because I know how that can feel. It can feel so widespread. Yeah. It gets rid of the guilt. It really gets rid of the guilt.
Yeah, gonna try that. I want to talk about, so there's some people that will identify things that feel like self-care to them. But then they have a reason why they can't do it. We talked about this just kind of briefly at the beginning. So the number one reason I think all moms use, and I'm using the word reason loosely, is I have no time, or I have no energy, or I can do it after I get this big piece of project out of the way. And I just wanted to talk about that, because I think even at this point in time, where literally we've been given our 24 hours back, where you kind of get to design what it is, people are still saying, I don't have time to do the things that I need to do for myself. So how can we move past that?
A nice little thing to remember in this is that whereas spiritually and emotionally we want to make change, mentally we actually like to keep things the same. So your brain, like your actual brain, is a part of your physical beingness. And in that, you have that lovely thing called homeostasis, which we all learned in like elementary school, where homeostasis really is all about keeping balance and keeping things the same. You know, it will not get too hot, it will not let you get too cold, and it will not let you change your mind. So you have those lovely neural patterns that are just kind of ticking away. And so it really helps to see that resistance to putting in self-care as a neural pathway. And you need to actually be really gentle with your mind, and you need to say, it's okay. You'll be okay. We're just going to practice this. And give yourself, I actually like to tell people, take a week. Tell yourself you're going to just do it for a week and see how different you feel. Take it slow. You know, every morning I'm going to listen to a meditation on Insight Timer for 5 minutes, and I'm going to put that into practice. Don't worry, mind, it's not a really big deal. We're just going to take this very slowly. Like, you know, you just really treat yourself very gently with it, then you just do it. and you kind of give yourself a pat on the back, and then you check in at how you feel after that week. Go gently with yourself, because we have a tendency, that resistance to that change, that kind of sense of procrastination and then feeling disappointed in ourselves, that's a pattern. It's a neural pathway that's just there. And when you start to just put something, a little thing in place, hey, have some essential oils, and once a day, smell your essential oils and feel yourself grounded. That counts. And then at the end of the week, celebrate your wins. That's why when we started, you were like, any wins? Celebrate your wins. Notice where you did well, because then you're actually telling your neural pathway, haha, I did it, look. And the world did not end. We're okay. You're retraining your mind with a new neural pathway. And the more you practice it, the more that's going to become practiced, and that's going to become the new norm. And with the new norm, then that's the new balance. So I think that's the important thing in that. It's like we make these things too big. It's like self-care. Like it's like, okay, here we go. Everything out the window. I'm not thinking about anyone else. You go, no, that's not. It's really not about that. So taking care of yourself, moment to moment, in the present moment. Little things, little steps that you can take, and retraining your mind to tell yourself, I'm good at self-care.
I love that, Chris. Let me tell you why. I think in the past, when I think, okay, I'm lapsing on my self-care, we need to do something, I go all out, right? We're going to turn the bathroom into a spa. We're going to do facials, pedicures, manicures, body scrub. And obviously, it never gets done because it always feels too overwhelming. And by the time I even clean the bathroom, I'm tired. And I'm like,
self-care. No. Yep. Well, and it's interesting too, because I think you touched on something really interesting, because even within the thing of saying, I think my self-care is getting low, find your indicators. Like, okay, for me, if my voice starts rising to my head and I start talking really high and really like, I'm like, whoa, I am very ungrounded, so then it's like drop space. If I start feeling really tired, self-care obviously needs to be bumped up. If I start feeling slightly agitated, like if I start getting irritation in me, I'm like, huge indicator. So figure out your indicators of where it is, and then just put something simple in there. So you're listening to yourself, because even in listening to yourself, you're practicing self-care. So don't use the chart to figure out whether you're good on self-care. It's not like, oh, I haven't done the exercise at the spa and my hair is like, whoo. That's not your measurement of self-care. Your measurement of self-care is, am I irritated easily? I'm even going to take it a little step further. Am I feeling really drained of energy or fighting something? You can even say, I'm fighting something. Oh, time to refuel. I better take some time off, or time to connect. Going back to the schedule thing as well, weekends from now on, ever since this whole thing has collapsed, I used to see a few clients on weekends, and now I'm like, nope, my weekends are like that. Because that is something that I noticed throughout the week by the time Friday comes, I'm like, yeah. So find your indicators and then use self-care to get yourself refueled from the indicators rather than too much, because otherwise it becomes self-criticizing again.
Exactly.
And that's what's so funny, is there's so many things in this process of self-care that actually we do ourselves in before we even start. It's like we're criticizing ourselves for not doing self-care. It's like, that's not self-care. Love yourself.
Great intentions, and then came full circle.
Yeah. So take it step by step by step. Definitely.
What I love about that, I love the conversation about honing in and feeling when you're getting off balance. And I love the fact that you've given us like really simple things. I actually love the focus on your feet.
I love focus on your feet.
It might feel weird if you're in a crowded space, but none of us are in crowded spaces at the minute. We're home, right? So you can always look at your feet. And I think that just literally takes a couple of seconds to reground.
Well, and you don't even have to look at them. You can even just wiggle your toes, and you can just imagine your like roots coming out from below your feet. I actually, before we headed into, not going out, my daughter and I joined a choir, right? So we were part of a community choir, and I was loving it. Like, trust me, I was like loving this choir, and I was singing to my heart's content. But what I found was I used to sing when I was really little, and I used to always feel really kind of unsteady in myself when I was singing, and I noticed that feeling kept coming back, and I was like, that's really weird. I shouldn't feel unsteady in myself now. Like, what's going on? So I actually became quite well known for making sure I took off my shoes. So I walk into choir and I take my shoes off and I'm walking around in my sock feet, because it is actually even scientifically shown that rubber-soled shoes stops the electricity in your body from grounding. So I was creating all this energy as I sang, like energetically. I was like, because I'm a soprano, so it was way up there. And then, but if I took my shoes off, I would feel the floor beneath my feet, and I was grounded and I was rooted, and never had the problem again.
I love it.
Occasionally members of the choir were like hiding my boots and stuff just to tease me, but like, what's going on? But still, it was like, it was a profound difference. So even if you're doing that, self-care, half the time I am walking around just in socks around my house, just to keep my energy flowing, take care of myself.
Do you have any additional tips that are like that feel very simple, that might resonate with someone else that's listening, that they can use when they feel themselves coming out of balance?
One thing that I'm suggesting to a lot of people right now is what I call the octopus. And the octopus is simply, if you imagine an octopus with its tentacles all out, if you imagine yourself with your tentacles all out and your focus scattered in all directions like those tentacles, right? So you imagine all of your attention all over the place, feeling totally pulled in all directions. If you think about an octopus, even though it has tentacles, you don't think of the tentacles as the octopus. The octopus is still the center of the octopus. So you imagine yourself as that octopus, tentacles all out, and you allow your attention to shift center. And that's it. Just release the attention from what's out there and find it within. And you can even give yourself like a word. Sometimes a word will pop up that just reminds you what that feels like. I've had people just say, oh, it's just me. That just feels like me. I've had people say, oh, calm, or like sacredness, or whatever that is to you, that is your center. And that is what defines you, rather than the octopus tentacles. And I find that, especially right now, that is really working for a lot of people.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been a really great and powerful talk. I think one that's so critical for this time. So thank you so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. I have had a wonderful time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're all about sharing and supporting this village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to share it with your family and friends. And remember, this is a weekly show. So if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified of our next episode. As we always say in the village, you're just one connection away. With love and gratitude, empower us. Until next time.